Welcome everybody to the Ontario Association of Broadcasters annual Career Day event. We're going to get things started now, and opening courtesy of Troy McCallum is this video to enjoy.
Welcome, broadcasting students in OAB. First of all, thank you so much for asking me to bestow upon you everything that's in here. God help you. Bear with me. Don't have a lot of time. Got to be a lot of fast edits here. I got too much stuff. Okay. You got to get their attention. Just send us your best stuff. And then you got 15 seconds, at least in my books you do, 15 seconds to wow me, to make me think, oh yeah, okay, this person's got some qualities there I think I might be able to work with. So there you go. Step one, I'm getting a gig. Can you do production? Can you write? Can you produce? Can you edit video? Can you shoot video? Social media. Yes, being on air is important, but in today's industry, in case you haven't noticed, things are shrinking. So ultimately, you want to be the person where if they need to let somebody go, they go, we can't let them go. They do too much. They're too valuable. So be that person in order to get the gig. Attitude is everything, okay? If somebody calls you up, a program director calls you up, say, hey, I heard your demo. I think it's pretty good. Are you interested in chatting? You're like, wow, holy cow, I can't believe it. This is so out of the blue. Tell me a little bit more about it. And if it's okay, can I call you back at a good time and go over some questions that I may have? Get yourself some passion, because that will help you. What? You need your foot in the door, because when you get your foot in the door, it gives you that opportunity to go, hey, I can do this. Hey, I'd like to try this. Volunteer for everything. Even if you don't know it, learn it. I was offered the job of program director. I'd never been a program director before. I'm 7+ years into it. Things are pretty good. I didn't really know everything about it, but I said yes, and I learned along the way. And you know what I got? You got to be willing to relocate. You got to be willing to move. You got to go where the money is and set yourself some goals when you're there. All right. I'm in small market, Alberta. I give myself 2 years to learn as much as I possibly can so I can move on and get the next best gig in a bigger market with more money. And then set yourself another goal of 2 years or maybe 3 years. Life gets in the way. But either way, know where you ultimately want to go and work towards getting there. Make those phone calls, make those connections, do all that networking. It's very important. Send out your demos to PDs of markets you want to go to and ask for their critiques. If they don't get back to you right away, chances are a lot won't, but just keep trying. Do not lose sight of where you want to be, so you can ultimately, what? Passion is going to be what fuels your career onward and upward. So thank you for the opportunity to chat with you. And I look forward to working with you in the future. Good luck. Get a gig.
All right. Well, welcome. Thank you so much, Troy McCallum from Boom 97.3 for the inspiration and ways to get ahead. Get the Gig is our theme for today, our annual OAB Career Day. Thank you so much to our title sponsor as well, Evanop Communications, the second year of sponsoring this virtual format. I'm Gina Lawrence, and I chair the Education Liaison Committee, and I'm also a broadcast journalism professor at Fanshawe College. 10 schools from across the province are participating in today's Career Day, and the fact that you've shown up shows that you care about the profession, your future, and getting the gig, and also that your schools and professors do too. New this year, we have added a job board to our website, oab.ca, and it's going to be available for the rest of the month. You'll be able to see what careers are available and link through those full postings. And different points throughout the day, I'll add that link into the chat box, so you'll have access to that. Thank you to OAB's Val Skivington for putting this together. And thanks to our OAB membership for providing these opportunities for you. You have possibly been filling in a question board that we sent to you on how to stand out in your job search. And I'm going to head over there now just to see some of the reactions that we already have on how you are maybe going to be able to stand out, or how you will, I shouldn't say maybe, how you are standing out in your job search. So really, this is a day for you to find some focus, get some advice, have something that you want to take away. You already know that you have something special to offer. And all of our panelists today also want to hear what it is that you want to know, because we want you to get the gig. A big thank you to all of our moderators and panelists who are volunteering their time to help you get ahead. You're going to find information about each of our participants also on our oab.ca website. And I honestly want to thank also the organizing committee that I'm part of, consisting of Ward Smith, Jody Brooker, Wendy Gray, Doug Caldwell, Paul Thomas, and Val, who have put together 5 dynamic panels to share their expertise and answer your questions. We also this year have student ambassadors from some of our OAB member colleges who will appear on camera to help represent your interests and ask questions. But we also want you to ask questions. I'm going to just stop this, I think, and come back to you because I want to make sure that we're kind of focused on how this is going to work. So the panels are 40 minutes in length. And what we want you to do is there's a little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I mean, we're using the chat to have some conversations, but if you could use the Q&A, it helps us stay organized about what those questions are. And you also have the chance to upvote. Maybe someone else has already asked the question that you're wondering about. So support that one. And we'll make sure that between our student ambassador and also our moderators that we get the information that you're looking for. Yes, so anyhow, thank you for thinking about what it is that you have to offer. The best way for you to be involved is to have your questions and to connect. And we're going to take a break partway through the day for the presentation of the Michael Monty Student Scholarship Award. That's around 3:10. That will be followed by a break. And again, please make use of the Q&A box. This is all about you today. And getting fantastic advice, takeaways, and you're going to realize how collaborative this industry is as well and how transferable your skills are. Each panel will have some takeaway for you today, even if you don't think it's your area of expertise. So let's get underway with our first panel. It's a broad overview of getting the gig. And our moderator is Paul Ferguson with Starboard Communications, Vice President of Programming and Operations, and I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Gina. And it is really terrific to be a part of this panel again this year in the OAB's Career Day. You know, I've been in the business 27 years and change now, and Troy McCallum's video that kicked off the presentation today, that inspired me and been around the block a few times. And really, I hope you know, you guys were able to really absorb a lot of what Troy was saying there, because in just a few minutes, he was able to really encapsulate a lot of key points in getting the gig. And our goal on the panel here today is to take a lot of what Troy said and put it together with our own thoughts and really help you guys obtain that first entry-level job that you've spent the last couple of years studying to get. And as Gina said, and I'll echo this again, if this panel goes perfectly, you're going to be able to get our thoughts, but we want to spend the bulk of the next 40 minutes answering your questions. So please do go ahead and make great use of that Q&A board. I'll do my best to keep an eye on that and get to your questions and spend as much time as we can interacting with you folks who are with us today. What a pleasure to introduce the panel we've got today. And I'm going to introduce these folks and then I'm allow them a couple of minutes to explain a bit about their trail in life. And I'm going to start with a guy who I'm happy to call a friend and a mentor, even able to work with Tim Wieczorek a bunch of years ago. And he is the Executive Vice President of Radio for Torres Media. Welcome, Tim Wieczorek. Tim.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I guess to start my career started in 1980 at a station called Chez FM in Ottawa. Since then, I spent most of my time in Ottawa, but I'm, as you can tell, I'm not from an announcer background. But I've worked in about 4 markets in Eastern Ontario, not about, exactly, 4 markets in Eastern Ontario. I've worked for big corporate companies, and I've worked for independents. They both have their advantages, and I can say that one's not better than the other to me, but they have different pluses and minuses. I think for me, my biggest ability was to mimic. I've done over my years is look at the people who are the best at it and copy them. I was saying on a sales meeting today to one of our groups that I've never had an original idea in my life. Most of them have been plagiarized, and and they evolve, right? And I think I love the industry. I've done it for a very long time. I wanted to get in the industry as a kid. I had a crystal radio way back in the day. Though out of high school, I worked in a factory, and in the late 70s, there was great money to be made in a paper mill. So, I quite didn't like shift work and working weekends and stuff like that. But it enabled me to get a brand new motorcycle in 1977, and it was a blast. I think the industry's evolved quite a bit. I think there's lots of stuff to do in it. And I think you've got to be open to change if you want to work in radio. I know when I was in college at Algonquin back in, I guess it was late 79 or early 80, I had a teacher named Barry McLaughlin. He was on the Air Force, CBC Air Force, and he taught us copywriting, and he asked me what I wanted to be, and I said, I want to be a radio copywriter. He asked me, what do they make? Do you know what they make? I said, I have no idea. He says, well, they don't make that much money. And he told me the amount yearly, and back then it was very small. And I said, who makes the most money? He said, salespeople. I said, okay, that's what I'm going to be. I didn't get out of the factory to go to college for 2 years to go back and make like half the money I was making in the factory. Actually, it was less than half. But anyways, I love the business. I think there's great people. I've made have lifelong friends. And if I give you one piece of advice, be polite, and that'll get you a long way. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Wendy Gray is with us today as well. Wendy is the General Manager and Director of News at CHGK and CJCS for Vista Radio. Welcome, Wendy.
Hi, thank you for having me today. Not a stranger to these panels, it seems, these days, but it's a thrill to be here and speaking with up-and-coming broadcasters. I started my career after graduating Loyalist, shout out to Loyalist, in 1993. I think I just missed you, Paul, by a couple of years. Yeah. And then I took a job back in my hometown. I took broadcast journalism at Loyalist, and my career started out as a host. I spun records, literal records, and CDs. There was no automation back in those days. And I stuck it out for quite a few years doing that, and also doing some swing shift for news and announcing and news reading. And then all of a sudden we got purchased, and I got sent on my way to Bracebridge to become the national news director for Halliburton Broadcasting. And Vista bought us and kept me on and made me director of news for Vista Radio. And so part of my success, I think, has been because I've been willing to move. I started out as an announcer. I wore a full-blown moose costume in the middle of summer, handing out samples. So I worked my time in promotions too, and then full-time into news, which has always been my passion. And I enjoy working in news and keeping that passion up for what's going on in the world and telling those stories. So yeah, be ready to move. Be ready to work in small markets. You know, everybody has this dream of moving to a large market, but I think it's something that we don't talk about enough. If you really want to affect change and you really want to put people on the radio that otherwise wouldn't be there, your best opportunity to do that is small and medium markets, as well as, you know, learning how to host, learning how to write a commercial, learning how to voice a commercial. It's all of those things that you get in small and medium markets that just make your resume shine. So that's
Great.
where I'm at.
Thanks, Wendy. Scott Pettigrew's here as well. Scott's station manager for Acadia Broadcasting. It's terrific to have you, Scott. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and honored to be here with the OAB. I am a graduate of Conestoga College, and excited to be sharing some of my wisdom that I have acquired, because I remember still fondly back to getting my first job paid at CJCS in Guelph, and working a summer job, and just like many here, did all nights and did whatever anybody asked, from sports to news to court reporter to hosting a show overnight. From there, went on to work in Stratford, then on to Blackburn Radio for 25 years. And then I scared myself to death by going to Winnipeg to work for Chorus Radio and take on a major news talk operation there. I came up on the programming and news side, so a little different path to station manager. Most do come from the sales side, so it's a little different, but it's unique. And when I'm in my role now, to understand what's going on in the studios and in the newsroom, and how we're gearing our stations for that. But just to give you an idea, I had to jump off for a second because my engineer just came in and said our roof is leaking. That's the other things that come up sometimes. We're having a tremendous rainstorm here in Halifax, where I am. But Acadia Broadcasting, I just want to put a little plug in, because we're not well known in Southern Ontario. We have a number of stations from Thunder Bay to Kenora, and then also in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And many of them are, to Wendy's point, small and medium sized stations. Halifax is our biggest operation, but a great entry point for a lot of grads from college, because we're in a position where we are hiring people with no experience to go to some of those smaller markets to do exactly what others have said: cut your teeth, be willing to learn and do every job in the station. I fondly remember back to Ted Rogers speaking at my college one year, our awards dinner. And Ted said, the best advice I ever heard was be somebody. And he said, be somebody who needs to do the dishes that are in the sink, or take that box of stuff out to the trash, or pick up that weekend promo, or put on the moose costume and go hand out stuff. Do that kind of stuff. Because I'll tell you now, as the station manager, the people who are doing that stuff and putting their hand up first to what they were saying on the video, those are the ones that make it very hard to get rid of down the road, because they're invaluable and they're the ones that are going places. The ones that are hiding and just coming in, doing their job, going home, there's very little space for that in our business anymore. You have to be multitasking all the time, because we just don't have enough people to have that luxury that we did early on in our career. And even then, I'm hesitant to say that, because I think that seems to be the way that's been for 35 years, is you had to do everything back in the 80s and 90s as well. That hasn't really changed, but those are the people that are still in the business now.
Scott, I'm going to stick with you for a second if I can, because, and I encourage all the folks taking in the panels today to go and read the bios of everybody that speaks to you today, because there's great information in there. You folks with Acadia hired a lot of people. You just referenced that. You're still hiring people. So we have not only a group of new broadcasters about to hit the industry that are participating today, they're also competing with existing broadcasters in getting these jobs. So if you have, and we'll give everybody on the panel a chance to weigh in, but you're in the process right now. If you have all these people, what can the folks do? What's the single biggest thing they could do right now to help themselves stand out?
Yeah, great question. I think be interesting. That's the one thing that I think, if I'm trying to identify somebody who is going to especially be an on-air person or in news, you have to have a broad range of knowledge, and to be able to go from interviewing the local mayor to sometimes you're interviewing the prime minister to covering a sports event, creating good content, comes from having a lot of awareness of what's going on around you. So I'm honestly looking for deeper down in the resume, less about where you went to college and more about, were you on the high school debating team? Did you run for students council? Did you participate in elite athletics? Did you travel? Did you take a year off to go travel Europe? Those types of things I find very interesting, because if we can hire well-rounded, interesting people, it's hard to know how good I am as a program director giving air checks to make somebody who sits in their basement and plays video games all the time sound interesting to the day-to-day person who's listening to our radio station. So I'm looking for interesting. And if you can find ways on your resume and on your demo to show that you're interested and well-rounded and not just this was, that is, that type of old school radio, we're looking for the differentiator right now for radio is what goes on in between the songs. If we can't create good content that is on multi-platforms, we're going to really be struggling. So those are the key things I'm looking for to get you to the interview.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Wendy, what would you add to that?
Well, I think Scott answered that excellent, but I look for a healthy sense of curiosity to go to Scott's point of being well-rounded. The one thing that if I get to the interview stage with an applicant, if you're not curious, if you don't know what markets you're applying for, if you don't know who I am, a little bit about me, and if you can't tell me what the top 2 news stories of the day are in Canada, then you're going to get booted out in about 5 minutes. But if you can show me that you've got a healthy curiosity, you ask me questions, you ask me questions about Vista, you ask me questions about why we do the things that we do, why do we have these news websites that are mostly about news. If you can prove to me that you've got a curiosity and that you're willing to learn and ask questions, then that makes you stand out to me. If it's just I ask a question, you answer it, and it's kind of like interviewing a politician, that's not interesting to me, and that makes me feel like you're not curious about what you've applied for.
Interesting. And we've got some questions in the Q&A board. And so, Tim, I'm going to turn to you with a couple of those, because again, if this next half hour goes perfectly, we're going to get a lot of interaction with students. And I believe the first question we got, I think we've handled from Devin, who asks about somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience to go on. What are you looking for in the resume or the demo for someone just starting out? And I think Wendy, you and Scott have done a good job of talking about that. I'm going to bounce to the top, Tim, and go to you. And it comes from Jim Van Horn. And I think that's the Jim Van Horn who's one of my favorite broadcasters of all time. He says 15 seconds to make an impression on a demo. And he's referencing the video that Troy McCallum provided to open the session today. Jim's question is that the same with everyone? So Tim, someone applies to you for Torres Media. Do you adhere to the 15 seconds to make the impression, or how do you handle that?
That's a great question. And, one of the things how do you cut through the clutter? It's the same for everybody, right? Like the amount of radio stations on the air right now, the amount of information that people are exposed to. There's lots of stuff out there. And how do you get through, and how do you get me to think about it? And I'll go before the resume. Now the beauty today is almost every station in the world is streamed, right? So if you're looking to get in with Acadia or get in with us, have you listened to any of our stations, or Chorus or Rogers? And, have you reached out to somebody that's on air and said, hey, I'm a student here in the college, and I'd like to get in the business, and you're on the afternoon drive or evenings, and you could go look at different markets and say, could you do a critique of my tape? And a lot of people that aren't maybe in management, they'd love to do that. They've got the time. My problem is my time. Like I get over 100 emails a day. So you can send me an email and think it's quite possible I'll never see it. Like how do you, and so, but if you send it to one of my announcers in one of my markets and say, hey, can you take a listen to this? Or I've got some copy here. And, they send it to the creative head at one of the stations, or a copywriter or a producer, and say, hey, I'd like you to critique my stuff. And then you ask that person, you got any jobs there? Hey, I could check the general manager, or I can check the whoever. And my employee walks into me and says, hey, I'd like you to look at this stuff. That's a pretty good shortcut. Like I just hired a young woman in Ottawa a few months ago. And how she got her stuff in front of me was a guy who works for me, and I hired him like 30 years ago at another station. And he volunteers at the food bank. And Daryl walks in, he calls me up on the phone one day. He says, I got this guy that I know, I volunteer with him at the food bank, and he's got a younger sister that's in the program at Algonquin, and she's looking for an internship. And I said, well, what's he like? He's a really good guy. He runs, he works at the food bank. And anyways, he sent me the stuff. I listened to it. And I felt that, listening to her work, her on air, that like she had a very cool kind of tenor for a rock station. And so I said, yeah, I'll take you on for an internship. And it was really fast. And now I've hired her. But it didn't come to me directly. She had an advocate. And I don't know if she did it on purpose. I never asked her that question. But if I'm out there, when I was out there, like as a rep, I knew all the reps in the city. You network, like who could help you? Like who's an influencer on me? I think that's, you got to start looking at other things rather than going at things directly. Sometimes, you got to look at some side opportunities where it's not as crowded, like there's an evening jock somewhere and you send them a tape and you listen to them, but you can listen to, like, there's so many good stations online, right? Like I tune into, there's some American stations that I tune in, especially for our rock station. I listen to Paul's station for country, but I also listen to CJJR out of Vancouver. It's, I listen to a lot of radio, and I just don't listen to it in my market. I listen because I'm always on the search for talent. So that would be my answer to it. Like, you could stand it. How do you get to me? Well, the best way to get to me is through somebody else. Though, people, it's not that I don't want to talk to you and I don't want to see your stuff. It's just, especially in the last 2 years, we've shrunk our staff and we're trying to make it through this pandemic. It looks, and your timing's good because we're looking, in the next year, we're looking at growth. We're looking to grow our teams. And so your time is really good to probably get in the industry now. And I'm going to be looking for new people because you have like the young people have different ways of viewing things and looking at things, and they bring different ideas. So I think it's a really cool time, despite the challenges. Anyways, I hope that answers the question, Paul.
Yeah, it's good. No, and that's uplifting to hear. And I do want to drive home one thing you said I think was really, really great is that, you don't necessarily just have to go to the person at the top. You can make contacts with employees throughout the company. And all of a sudden, you've built a bit of a network within the company. That employee could very well go to you and say, hey, I had this person reach out and I think their stuff's pretty good. Now they've got an ambassador on the inside.
Exactly.
So I think for the students on today, that's good advice. Scott, let me go to you for another question from Jim, and it's about references. And it says, do you check references? And if so, what are the top 2 or 3 questions that you would ask to a reference?
I'm going to answer that because we do check references. It's mandatory for our company. I want to just go back to demos though for a second. Customize your demo for the station you're applying to. It is so easy to edit audio now. It is so easy to learn, to Wendy's point, what are the top stories in Bracebridge or Stratford or wherever you're going. Tell me how you would do local content. And going that extra mile gets you to listen past 15 seconds. Because now at least you made an effort versus mass emailing me. So now, as far as references, yeah, one of the things that we're looking for, Jim, is definitely that attitude of being willing to go above and beyond. That's the piece there. If you've got to be chasing them up and down the halls for work to be completed, that type of stuff. Are they diligent? Are they interesting? Are they a good team player? Those are initially for young broadcasters. That's what we're looking for, the people that have that potential. And I think we all see it in the business now, of who, it's not hard to spot the talent that is going above and beyond. I know we had somebody that we hired in Thunder Bay that the references just came back glowing, and people going, I knew she wasn't staying here long because she's that good. And I'm glad that she's going from our evening weekend person to your afternoon drive person. We all as broadcasters understand the industry survives by giving good references to the good people and helping them go along, because we all tell everybody, you've got to be willing to move. And but that's the network we have. Wendy, Gina, many of the people on this call have been friends of mine for a long, long time. And I know when I call Wendy, Greg, we're going to share honestly what that person is and who they are. So it is a small industry when it comes to that. I hired a guy in Winnipeg that I didn't know, but I knew all three of his references, and he had never worked east of Saskatchewan and I had never worked west of Manitoba, but I knew all three of his references and two of them had worked for me. That's how small a business this is, because everybody ends up being in Fort Mac for a while or something like that.
I want to piggyback something you just said, Scott, and turn it to Wendy and ask this. How do you feel, Wendy, when you see on a resume? Because Scott said he's hired somebody based on the fact that he knew all three of the references. So when you see on a resume references available upon request, do you believe that that's somebody leaving money on the table?
Good question. I would like to see references included. More references available on request does nothing for me. As Scott says, if I see Scott Pettigrew, I might not even go to the interview stage if their resume has caught my attention to actually get down to the references section. I might, if I see Scott's name on there, I might call Scott and say, hey, got this resume. Tell me what you know about this person. So yeah, it really helps, because as Scott said, the industry is so small that chances are I will know somebody on the resume. To the other question about on resumes about using professors, to me, I probably know your professor if you're in a broadcast journalism program. So I will have that frank conversation, but I would rather speak to past employers. I don't care if it's somebody that you babysat for, or somebody that was your manager if you were stocking shelves in a grocery store. I want to speak to past employers. I want to know, were you punctual? Were you respectful? Would they hire you again? That's a very telling answer. And I'll tell you a very short story. We're hiring, by the way, so if you're interested, Vista's hiring. But I asked a reference check from a person that I hired just out of school not too long ago. And I said, would you hire him again? And she said to me, absolutely not. And I said, really, why? Because this is not the job for him. He needs a job in radio. That's where he is passionate. I tell you, he's been with us for about 8 months now, and I wish I had 12 more of him, because he's just that good, and he's right straight out of school. So that's a really important question. If they had said, nah, kind of lazy and disrespectful, well, then that would have been a different thing. But just that answer, no, he needs to be in radio, got him that job.
Interesting stuff. Alexandra from Durham asks a question I think we've touched on, but if anybody wants to weigh in quickly on this, because I want to get to as many of these questions as we can. Is it best to sell yourself as really good at one thing or decently good at a lot of things? And I'll say, going back to Troy's opening video, you want to be, put it in sports terms, a bit of a 5-tool player as best you can, right? You want to be as good as often as you can be at as many things as you can be. Anybody have any quick thoughts on that?
I'll jump in, Paul. I think it being, because I'm a guy that was not great at anything, good at a lot of things, and it probably got to me where I am today. So I do like those people. Right now, if you have graphic skills, if you have video editing skills, a lot of that kind of stuff now is all part of content production. Your ability to do some production, because somebody may be on vacation or there's opportunities to jump in, or in some of our cases, you're doing all of those in one role. So don't downplay any of those extra things. And especially whether it's your TikTok experience or different things like that, all of that daily content, you now have so many other places where you can create content. And that for some of us, we're looking to hire and add that skill set. Just with one of our news people has a secondary job as a professional photographer, but her photography and eye for photos has made our news website so much better. So little things like that you think may not be relatable, having an eye for visual right now, because we're not just radio anymore. You know, we are multi-content platform providers, and our websites and our YouTube videos and all of that all come into that. So yeah, don't underplay some of those other skill sets.
Well said, Scott. Tim, Hussam from Fanshawe asks this question. And I'm coming to you specifically because, again, you talk about how, you know, you had applied for a copy job when you were early days of your career, and then you found out salespeople make more money, so you did a quick turn. His question is, how do you deal with learning something that you didn't necessarily intend to pursue? For example, his example is wanting to be a radio announcer and all of a sudden learning sales work. And Scott, you probably have some compelling information on that too. But Tim, I'll start with you on that.
Well, I think if any job in radio is sales, you know, like if you're, you know, if you go to your boss and you want to do something, you got to sell them on it, or you got to present the benefits of you doing that. You know, like the copy, well, that was actually, I didn't apply for copy. I was still in the classroom then, but I'm open to doing anything. Like you've helped me with it, but I'm programming stations now. I'm picking music. I'm scheduling music. Like, I'm a sales guy. You can, and I didn't learn it. Like, I'm 65 and I didn't learn how to do that stuff until in my 60s or late 50s, right? I always hung out. I think, you know, in the radio station, what I always liked about the radio station was the people I worked with. I always took an interest in their jobs, you know, back in the day, watching in production, the guy cut tape. Like, that always amazed me, how they could cut tape and make it match up. It was like just mind blowing to me. But take an interest in other people and what they do. You'll be surprised what that you'll have a flair for that you never thought you did. Yeah, it's tough. It depends on people, right? Like Wendy said earlier, like, she doesn't want to talk to teachers. I want to talk to teachers. Like, personally, I think they see them every day, and they know how they get along with others, how they behave in the hallways and that stuff. And everybody's different. Like, and to assume that the answers I've given you is what Scott wants to see, it might not be like that. But yeah, I just think you got to be open, and that's as the industry changes and evolves, because it's never going to stand still, and you got to be ready to adapt. And if you don't adapt, then you should do something else, I think.
Scott, you and I are in a comparable situation where, you know, I'm in a VP role and you're a station manager, and we both come out of the programming side, but you start to take on all departments in the building. So how did you tackle that when you all of a sudden had to take on other responsibilities?
Yeah, you know, the part that really scared me was when I took on the role of station manager in Thunder Bay, and about 2 months into it, my sales manager left, and I didn't come from the sales side. And I had to quickly realize that I had to do a lot of learning, because that was probably the one area of the business I didn't know, but it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I had to figure it out. But to your point, because I knew what good creative was, I knew how a commercial got from sales to air and what a good frequency was and all those types of things. I knew a lot of things on the back end side of how radio works, and I believed in the product, and I was able to teach, because a lot of our salespeople don't come from a journalism or a broadcasting school. Most of the salespeople I hire have no previous radio history, so I have to teach them how to believe in the product, and that's becoming more and more difficult as less young people are listening to the radio and have other opportunities. It's not like they grew up with it. So that's been a challenge going forward, but I think that's the ability to have a broad knowledge of all the different areas of the business and take curiosity. We invite our staff, if they're in programming, come to a sales meeting. If they're in sales, come to a programming meeting, doing all those types of things so that they learn. Because we talk about it every day, to your point, Tim, everybody in our staff is in sales. Everybody is responsible for revenue. You know, it's not just the salespeople over here and programming over here. We have to break down those barriers. Everybody is responsible. And I, in fact, just had an announcer 2 weeks ago, just sold $1,500 in advertising. And he came to me and goes, "Can I sell this?" I go, "Yeah." And will you pay me commission? I go, "Yeah." Like, we do revenue. Like, you don't have to have a sales title to sell something. And I said, "Yeah, we have to figure out new ways." And it doesn't even have commercials. It's all about a sports betting site that he had a previous relationship with from when he worked with the CFL. So those are the types of things now where we're hiring people that understand how we create content and is there a value for it for a client, and understanding that. So we're having to reinvent what revenue is. So I'm getting a little further off the path, Paul, but to answer the question, yeah, multitasking and understanding the whole business will help you go a long way.
Certainly. Wendy, I want to turn to you for a couple of, and certainly feel free to weigh in with any of your thoughts on what Tim and Scott were talking about, but there's a couple of questions I'd love to get your take on. And one of them comes from, I hope I'm getting this right, it's Aya Lucas. And it says, "I'm just trying to come out of my shell, so to speak. I've been pretty shy all throughout school. Do you think there's still hope for someone who may or may not have been very social and active in the past?" And that's a great question for somebody just coming out of the program.
I think it's true that a lot of radio people and broadcasters in general are pretty introspective when we're not in front of a mic. I think we can be pretty private people and pretty not social, I think. So that's not a hindrance, I don't think. I know a lot of my colleagues in the industry that are very private people, mostly because we talk on a microphone and people think that you know, we're their friends and they own a part of us, which is the magic of radio, actually. But I think the only thing that you have to be concerned about is, can you pick up a phone? Can you do an interview, whether you're, you know, I don't know what your particular vocation is, but whether it's news or whether you're on the air, you know, you still need to be able to pick up a phone and ask questions, whether you're interviewing the mayor, the prime minister, or the organizer of the Terry Fox run. You need to be able to have that much social skill that you can speak to them, be comfortable, be confident in what you're asking and what your discussion is moving forward. But do you have to be really social? No, you just have to be able to do your job and be in front of people, ask questions, and then you can go home, still maintain that curiosity that we talked about, right? That interest and stuff, be well-rounded. Don't just go home and play video games. You still need to maintain that curiosity, but you can do that on your own. You don't have to have 100 friends.
And Wendy, we've got lots of questions, by the way, and it's so great that you folks are so active on the Q&A board. We'll do our best to plow through as many as we can. Tim, I think I saw your hand up, though. You want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, like in Ottawa, there was in the late 80s, we hired a guy at a station named Doc Halen, and Doc Halen was terrified of being in public. Well, that's not his real name, but that was his on-air name. Went with Van Halen, right? But he just retired 2 years ago. He you know, went on 54 Rock, became the Bear, and then Shay stole them from Standard. And he was probably one of the best rock jocks in his time, right? On the radio. And he, socially, like that in public was not his skill, but man, one of the things was he was observant. He was observant what other people were doing. He had comment on it, and not in a degrading way, but in a humorous way. Like it was a pretty strong jock, and had a great following, great on social media. So like how you are, like if you're behind the mic, you just, some people are okay with that. And I know I've worked with other jocks that, they couldn't do this right now, what we're doing. But you get them behind a mic and they'll do a remote, but you need a salesperson there to sort of say hi to everybody for them. But anyways, that's all I wanted to add. So there's room for everybody. Every different type of personality, backgrounds and everything. It's don't be worried about stuff like that.
Well said. Just a few minutes left, so I'll bang through as many as I can here. And certainly I'm going to do my best to make sure we hit the ones that pertain to getting that first gig in the business, which, is the focus of our panel. I wish we had all day. Here's one that I'd love to quickly get everybody's thoughts on. Do you check applicants' social media, and what role does it play in hiring? And social media is a big tool in what we all do. And it's also a bit of a resume and a peek inside of someone's head in and of itself. Scott, let me start with you.
Yes, we check it mostly for maturity in young broadcasters. So if your feed is full of drunken parties and that kind of stuff, that's probably going to be a negative. We're looking again. Did you travel? Did you, do you look like you're social in some areas and different things? Do you have some interesting photos and some content there that's interesting? But yes, we do check it.
Tim?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I creep them.
Wendy?
Absolutely. Yes, and same things that Scott looked for. I'm looking for content. I'm not looking for, party pictures. And if I'm hiring specifically for news, I'm looking for well-rounded social media post balance. I'm not looking for somebody who is on one side or the other. That is definitely a flag for me.
Interesting stuff. There's another a question here from Todd Allison. Most of us are looking at going into radio right out of school and for internships. However, what if our ultimate goal isn't in radio, but an adjacent industry like podcasting or film or writing, editing? So all the skills these folks have obtained throughout their time, maybe the internships in radio, but do you guys have any suggestions as to how they can take advantage of the internship to take those skills, grow them, and apply them somewhere else? Wendy?
Never turn down a good internship, but never. And be honest. If that's what your future holds for you, or that's what your future aspiration is, then be honest with the person that's giving you the internship. Because as we've made this point, I might know somebody who's into podcasting and making a lot of money at it, or I might know somebody in the film industry. In fact, we had a person working for us in one of our stations that has moved on to the documentary film industry. I could, hook you up with that person. You could get a mentorship or a mentor from the people that we know in this industry. So it's being honest. Let us know what your end goal is. In fact, that's one of the questions that I ask in my interviews, and I think I probably asked it to Amanda, who's up on the next panel, because she worked for me, and look where she's gone now. But it's when you're getting ready to retire, you're 65 years of age, and you're getting ready to retire. And I always laugh at that because we probably won't at 65. But what job are you leaving? What job are you leaving? And that gives me an idea of, I've had things range from I want to be a sports broadcaster to I want your job, all kinds of stuff. But that gives you an idea of the motivation of the person and where they want to go and how you can help guide them there.
Hey, Tim, there, go ahead there. I think you would like to.
Yeah, like for the, like if Scott worked both Scott and I worked for Chorus, and I guess I've worked there for almost 15 years, right? And the podcasting and other things, like we spent a fortune at Chorus in the pre-2015 on digital, all things internet. We spent a lot of money. So like, just because you have an interest in a different area, that's a good thing to know, because we want more podcast content. We just we're not there yet where we want to be, but it's something we want to grow. It's something we want to get more involved in. So like, don't assume because that, maybe you'll come to us, and because you have that skill, we can invest in that area and start to develop it. So that's like Scott said earlier, like there's all kinds of content that we're running. So podcasts are right in our wheelhouse.
Scott, any thought on that?
Yeah, I think every broadcaster right now is looking for other revenue streams and trying to find different ways to monetize that. So don't assume that we're not looking at acquiring another business that goes into that content. To Tim's point, that podcasting or figuring out how to make money from YouTube or other things that align with our business already. So again, I think we're all on the same page that if you can produce interesting content, whether that's for news or for programming or for websites, those are the people that are going to be getting jobs.
Well, we still have so many unanswered questions. I think if I can invite you folks, and I'll go around the horn and have you guys give the 30-second wrap up, so that on the way out the door, our students, have the Precy down version. What are those things you really want the students to take away that are going to help them get the gig? Wendy.
Curiosity, passion, knowledgeable, do your research, know who you're applying to and what you're applying for, and the community you're applying in, specifically if it's in a news role. And be honest. Just be honest about what you are, what you think you're really good at, and where you need to grow. Because we've all been there. We've all just graduated from college, and boy, oh boy, we all had a lot of things to learn and still learn. And don't be afraid to say, I have this talent I think is missing from your company, right? Because not only should we have mentors that are older and more experienced than us, but we should also have people that are coming up behind us that can teach us new stuff too, because we're all little dogs and we need to be taught to.
Well put, Tim. What's your 30-second piece of advice for the folks to take away today?
Be a good listener, be curious, be an ongoing learner, always never stop learning. I've often said the day I stop learning is this day I'm going to stop working. So hopefully that I won't ever stop working. And be a team player. Be polite, be nice, be a good person, when you can. That doesn't mean you're always going to agree with people or get along with people, but I think you want to be polite, nice, a learner, and believe what you believe and speak the truth and walk the truth. That's what I think.
Scott.
I know we're almost out of time, so I'll be real quick. Smart, humble, and hungry. If I can identify those three things, smart, humble, and hungry, you're going to be probably moving to the next level, because I know you're going to grow in our business.
What a pleasure to be surrounded with minds far greater than mine today. Thank you so much, Scott Pettigrew, Tim Wieczorek, and Wendy Gray. You folks that are listening in today, thank you so much. And if there's anything we can do, even in a typed way, to answer the questions we couldn't get to, if we can do that, we'd be happy to do that. And I will say this, you folks, by participating today, have just made 4 new contacts within the folks that are on the panel here today. Don't be afraid to reach out and follow up. It's an important thing to mine real value out of the conference today. So again, to Scott, to Tim, to Wendy, thank you guys a ton for your expertise today. Again, it's easy to moderate a panel when you've got 3 pretty incredible minds. And so thank you guys. The next panel coming up in moments is News, Talk, and Podcasting. And it's my pleasure to introduce your next moderator. Coming up shortly, Scott Kitching.